Hi, I'm Alyssa. I'm going to be responding to this week's readings that deal with the legal struggles associated with anti-mining in El Salvador. So I just wanted to begin by saying it's pretty amazing that this 7-year lawsuit has been settled during the time that we're learning about it in class. I think that's really, really cool for us as a class to experience this. And I also really think it's amazing that we had the opportunity to speak with Pedro, who is an anti-mining activist who's on the ground in El Salvador dealing with these issues. I think that was a great opportunity for us to really get kind of an inside perspective. That being said, I'm going to give a little brief overview. I'm going to make a long story short because we've all been learning about this, so just a quick little overview of this situation in El Salvador. So basically, the Canadian-Australian mining corporation Pacific Rim-OceanaGold filed a lawsuit against the country of El Salvador in 2009 under CAFTA, which is an American trade agreement. Pacific Rim said that El Salvador didn't respect their legal rights to developing mining in this area, and they sued them for $301 million for loss of potential profit. What's really disturbing about this is if Pacific Rim-OceanaGold was successful, this would mean that corporations have the power to kind of dictate the policy in other countries where they're not citizens and they have like no ties to these countries in that way. So it's very upsetting. So all the readings in this week really outline the events of the lawsuit in detail, but one of the aspects of the readings that I found really interesting was the focus on civil society organizations and their roles in this lawsuit. So the Orellana, Banos, Berger reading focused on civil society organizations. Yeah, the positive outcome of this case was really thanks to a lot of the community citizen support, the local anti-mining movements and activism through the development of these civil society organizations. So one of the examples we learned about was La Mesa, and they really did influence government decisions in this case. So La Mesa was the National Roundtable Against Mining in El Salvador. They were formed to combat mining in the area, and they were very successful in influencing government support. I think this is great because it shows how the public can put pressure on government to make decisions. Initially, people in El Salvador thought that maybe mining corporations coming in would be good. It would bring development, establish jobs. But it's important to remember that not all development is a good thing for countries. This kind of development that Pacific Rim promised for El Salvador would not have been sustainable. These jobs would have lasted only 5 or 6 years, and then they would have just left the country in a very poor, even more poor environmental state than it already is, with polluted waters, and there's already a water crisis here, so definitely not something that El Salvador needed, which is why these local movements really pushed to protect El Salvador from further water pollution. So even though El Salvador won this case, a lot of people don't see it as a victory, including Pedro, and he kind of explained how if you celebrate El Salvador winning the case, it just legitimizes the system that allows American companies to override legal systems in other countries. The bottom line, I think, is that El Salvador should not have had to deal with this for 7 years. All of this upset and activist energy could have been placed elsewhere in helping develop the country in other ways. So I don't really see this as a success either, like Pedro said. Also, there's consequences that can't be repaid even though they have won this lawsuit. In the Steiner article, he refers to this as the corrosive communities. So all the anxiety, the violence, the terror that came along with this issue in El Salvador, the murder of activists, the turning of community members on one another, as some people supported mining, most people didn't, but it really was about turning people on each other and causing political turmoil in the country. You can't really repay these expenses. Our relationship as a Western country and our obsession with gold is at the heart of capitalism, and this is an instance where this capitalism is spilling over and directly impacting developing countries in negative ways. To me, this is colonialism, modern day colonialism. It's rich Western countries coming into developing countries, pushing them to support American corporations through corporate bullying. And what's really admirable about El Salvador is that they didn't give in under this pressure and under the lawsuit. They really stuck to what their people were saying about mining and remembered the negative impacts that it could have on their environment. And I think that's really admirable to remember that when people come together, they really can make a difference and influence government decisions. So that's something we can learn from this case for sure.